You're listening to the Yin and Yang Show, a marketing and sales conversation with Lindsay Kelly and Brian Signorelli. Strategic and tactical advice about inbound sales and marketing.
Hey, welcome back to the Yin and Yang Show. Thanks for joining us again. Lindsay, I am joined by my buddy Sig, my HubSpot friend. And this week we are coming to you live to talk about interviewing. Hi, Sig.
Hooray, yes, interviewing. Not exactly the sexiest topic in the world, but here we are. I thought it'd just, be worthwhile to spend a little bit of time building upon where we started, I think, last week with some of the, sourcing candidates, keeping your talent pool kind of full, leveraging LinkedIn to do that and some of the how-tos. So yeah, I'd figure maybe we'd, keep going and say, all right, well, now you got someone on the phone or someone that's actually coming in for an interview. Like, what should I be looking for? How do I know who's good or who's bad? So.
Yeah, no, I like that because one of the things that I had mentioned last week was the process that I'd gone through with the office technology dealership I used to work for in Baltimore. And, it was probably the best interview process I'd ever been through. And I had mentioned Mike Reardon, who is a consultant in the office technology industry. I have yet to call him just because I've been, I had to pack up my entire outside of my house, put it in my house so Irma wouldn't blow it away. And then I had to then unpack it again, and I'm still not finished. So I didn't get internet back really until, well, it's still not 100% back, but let's keep our fingers crossed that I don't lose it today. But I want to kind of, ask you, because I've never really interviewed salespeople. So I've interviewed tons of marketing people and interns and, employees and all of that. And I know that I have my style. But I'm really curious to see what some of the nuances are of really finding the right type of person for the type of sales role. Because I'm sure there's different things that you look for based upon what the role of the person will be inside the sales organization. Whether that's, entry level or, you're looking to immediately fill something with somebody who has more experience. And I'm curious to hear all of these things. All of these and more. I must know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, at HubSpot, we do have this framework called HEART, which I think I botched on one of our podcasts.
Really?
Didn't I botch that?
I would have never known that you botched HEART. I didn't know that because I don't remember you talking about HEART, but I'm going to write that down.
Definitely botched it. So it's
and I'm going to go back and find it.
Yeah, it's like the creed that HubSpotters kind of are supposed to live by. I think for the most part, we do. But I think the HEART, I think HEART stands for, and I always screw up the E and the A, but it's humble. I think it's either empathetic or effective. A is adaptable, R is remarkable, and T is transparent. And so I think those are all interesting things to aspire toward, but I think it's kind of tough sometimes to translate that down and say, okay, how do I screen for that? Or, if there's something that you want to use in your own company, what does that ultimately look like? So I'm not going to tell you how to interview for HEART, the HubSpot acronym today. I'm just going to share a little bit about, the types of things that I look for in candidates when I'm interviewing them for an entry level or entry to mid-level sales role, and the types of questions I might ask to kind of tease out whether or not this person actually has these skills or these values. And I think one of the hardest things to do as a sales manager is screen out, the bad from the good. And the reason I say that is you'd think if there's one profession that is excellent at interviewing, salespeople. We often just have the kind of gift of gab, and that makes interviewing pretty hard. And I be willing to bet that any manager who's ever hired for anybody in sales right now, I'd be willing to bet that you probably think that it's a coin toss. It's a 50-50, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's just a matter of getting people in and keeping the good ones and getting the bad ones out. I would argue it's not 50-50 and you could do better. And I'm going to share a tiny bit of knowledge on how I think you can maybe make a couple of tweaks in a hope to do a little bit better.
Awesome. Yeah, and you're right, because it's the best interviews are the ones where I am exhausted at the end because I've been talking the whole time because I am the person being interviewed.
Yep, absolutely. So I'll run down the kind of list of 6 things that I try to interview for. Some are far more difficult than others. Just making a note to myself here. Sorry about that.
It's all good. I was like, wait, did I lose my internet? Because that's totally possible.
No, and then I'll come back.
Oh, the Irma took my interwebs.
And then I'll come back and I'll share, a question that I might ask to understand whether or not someone exhibits one of these qualities.
Okay.
So here are my 6 or 7-ish. So the first is intellectual curiosity, or a kind of like a lifelong desire to learn. Second is an ability to be an active listener. Third is empathy. Fourth, humility. Fifth, and this is a really big one, arguably the biggest, self-awareness. Sixth, some demonstration of firm business acumen and understanding of how a business operates and why any one business buys something from another business. And then there's some other things like kind of what we call a GSD ability, which is kind of like, some people call it a grinder instinct or like strong work ethic. Like
I call it this.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yes.
I have a mouse pad and
Yes.
it says, "Get S done."
Yes.
I don't want to cuss because iTunes will mark me as explicit.
Yeah. So
but I held my mouse pad up from my friends at the Quintain group, which are defunct now, but that was a great thing that they handed out there in Inbound Agency.
Right.
Yes, GSD. Love it.
Get it done.
Starting with an S though.
Yes, exactly. Right. Exactly. Get it done. And then there's like a little nuanced one that like I sometimes test for, I sometimes don't. And it's called money weakness, which I'll come back to. So I'll just jump into a few of these, unless you wanted me to elaborate on any of the 6 or 7 that I had laid out there, Lindsay.
No, I'm actually, I want you to get through all of those so then I can go back to this money weakness issue, because that's always interesting to me, because I know that when I went through a lot of sales trainings and trying to figure out if I'd be a good sales rep or not, which I wouldn't be, that was really bad. That was hard for me.
Sure. So come back to intellectual curiosity. I think one of the easiest ways to test for that is just asking a really open-ended question and saying something like, talk to me about something you're interested in. And what I'm listening for is how detailed someone gets, how excited that they can get me about that thing. Like, I don't care if you're talking about, interstellar time travel, which personally I'm interested in, or if you're talking about how to julienne a mango. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I just want to be excited about it. I want to see if you can actually, if one, basically, like, you actually are committed to learning and you're interested in learning things, and 2, whether or not you can teach me something. Because I kind of see intellectual curiosity kind of line up. I mean, I guess it is separate. Like, ability to learn versus ability to teach are kind of different, but I see them as very connected, and I see them as really important sales skills.
I love that, because that's one of the things that we had to do as part of Reardon's training was we partnered up. We had to explain like how we learned how to do something. And I was partnered with a gentleman from RJ Young, Hunter. I love Hunter McCarthy. He's an awesome guy. He talked me through how he learned how to drive a car, which was really interesting, because it was, before this whole like physical driver's ed thing, it really was, mandatory. And then I talked to him about how I learned how to play the piano. And it was really interesting to kind of see us back and forth with, me not having any comprehension of trying to figure out how to drive without sitting in a classroom and somebody teaching me these things. And he listening to me, like, the evolution of how I learned how to play the piano. Mm-hmm. And, it's cool, like, listening to that. And you're right, there's an element of excitement there. That's fun,
Yep, exactly. Yeah, those are all, just building on that, I mean, those are all the types of things that I want to hear. Like, I actually want to be excited. I want to be kind of wrapped in. And there's a bit too there that is going to indicate to me what kind of storyteller they are. And kind of, this is how we all communicate as humans. We tell stories. Sometimes they're factual, sometimes they're embellished. Sometimes they're completely embellished, but I want to hear how you kind of engage in the, millennia old tradition of storytelling that we all carry with us as humans. So that's the first one. The second is active listening. This is fairly straightforward. I got kind of floored the first time that I was interviewing for with HubSpot. A guy named Pete Caputa, founded the channel partner program, asked me on the phone. He said, "Do you know what active listening is?" And I said, "Yeah, it means that I'm like paying attention." He's like, "Yeah, kind of." He's like, so I went on and kind of try to back myself out of corner. But basically, active listening literally means, are you actively like kind of making mile markers in your mind about the different words and phrases someone's using? And that doesn't mean you're recording everything and just playing it back to them. But it's really the ability to pay attention to, say, 3 to 5 minutes of monologue and be able to tease out certain like kind of high and low points from that 3 to 5 minutes and be able to sort of briefly summarize and build upon that, so that your prospect actually believes, and it shouldn't just be believed, it should be true, that you are listening to them, because that is one of the fastest ways, I think, to lose someone or to create a negative or poor sales experience is when, I'm talking and I'm sharing about all my pains and my challenges and my goals. And I'm kind of really opening up at this point to you and, explaining what's important and what I need. And then, you as the salesperson pick only one of those things that I talked about, if that, or you ignore everything altogether and say, yeah, that's great. Like, let me show you how the product works. That's immediate trust breakdown.
Breaker. Yeah.
Total breaker for me. So active listening is the second one. Empathy and humility, I think these are fairly difficult to test for. The types of questions you want to ask here, like, it's the tell me about a time type, tell me about a time type question. So tell me about a time you failed. And what I would like to do there in those questions is, tell me about a time you failed. Tell me how you felt about it. And then usually there's at least one or two other people involved in the story that they kind of like let down or whatever. And I say, and, from your perspective, tell me how you think person B felt about what you did. I'm trying to actually get them to, literally, I'm getting as close to being obvious about testing for empathy as I possibly can without saying it.
Right.
I'm literally trying to say, can you put yourself in someone else's shoes and kind of objectively evaluate your own behaviors relative to that? Which I know is a little bit of a, in the ether type of concept or existential type of exercise, but that is important. If you can't actually slow down and literally think about the challenges someone has or the problems someone has, without your own agenda in mind, and you can't kind of like, separate from that, then you're going to have a really tough time ever paying attention to people, helping them solve their problems, feeling like you're collaborating with them on working toward kind of a mutually defined solution. Humility, I think, is interesting. This is actually a fairly easy one to test for, especially at mid and senior level roles. Junior or entry level roles, a little bit more difficult. There's one question that I love to ask, and there's a very specific answer I'm looking for. And so the way I test for humility is I say, tell me about 2 or 3 people in your life who you've had who you very positively influenced. Or to kind of rephrase my own question, Lindsay, tell me about a few people in your life, or tell me about a few people whose lives you've very significantly impacted or positively impacted. And what I'm looking for there is whether or not I know the people, or that I would easily recognize the people that they list. What I mean by that is this: these people they list should be basically no one. Like, they should be, they should be their not no one, but they should be their brothers and sisters. They should be junior employees. They should be interns that working at the company. They should be people that, were in some way, whether it's experience, age, something else, were kind of, not below, but like basically less experienced, less tenure than this person. And that's the type of thing I want to hear. I don't want to hear, things like, oh, I made my boss look amazing because I did X, Y, Z, or I made the company like really shine because of blah, blah, blah. That's the opposite of humble.
Right.
And those things may be true, and that's great. But if you feel compelled to tell me about those things that make you look really good, as opposed to tell me about a time that you took time out to help someone out who's kind of in need of your help or lesser in some way, or reaching out for, I'm really struggling with the right way to phrase this, but I think you get what I mean. If you're helping someone grow as opposed to just pushing your own like upward mobility in a company.
Right. Like, do you have the ability to sit there and tell me about people that you have helped to nurture and grow and get to a place where they are now in their career, which is the first thing I thought of, one intern in particular, it's a really remarkable story. She still reaches out to me and still calls me her mentor, and girlfriend has way surpassed even me. Like, she's in New York City and working at this big agency, and she's like a little superstar, but she's still all the time like, oh, it's all because of you. You know what I mean? It's nice because, yes, we spent time together learning together. I always say it's not that I've done everything for you. It is that I've done what I can for you, and I've learned from you as well. So I love that. Yeah,
so it's I should find the source for it because I didn't come up with that on my own. I read it in some article from someone who's far more experienced and senior than I am, but just thought I don't know, pay it forward if that's, how you want to think about it. So that's humility for me. Self-awareness and business acumen. Business acumen, the way I test for business acumen is kind of super open-ended question. And I say, all right, Lindsay, like, say that I'm a CEO of a company, you're a consultant, I hired you to kind of fix a revenue problem we have. How are you going to go about that? Like, imagine that we're in our first meeting, very little. I just hired you because, a friend, recommended me to you. What are the first 5 or 6 questions you might want to ask me? It's really tough.
I was going to say, don't make me do that right now.
Yeah, I'm not. But it is a very difficult question.
Very difficult question.
There is no wrong answer.
Right.
There's no wrong answer. But I just want to see how someone kind of organizes information, how they dissect questions, or how they dissect, a business, basically. So anyway, it's a very tough question. I usually tell people after they answer, I say, look, I know that was a really hard question. Don't be too concerned about your answer. I'm really just looking to understand how you think about a very opaque, poorly defined problem, and whether or not you can kind of speak the lingo of business, which I know sounds very, I don't know, heartless, but still, you have to be able to do these things.
Yeah. Or at least have the intuition to take that step back and say, how can I dissect the problem and start figuring out how to provide the solution.
Right. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not getting into questions about all right, so the company's COGS is this, their SG&A is this, their EBITDA is this. I'm not going through an accounting class. I really want to understand, do you, for example, understand a basic principle, revenue minus cost equal profit, and that there are multiple levers you can pull.
I was like, that's a new word. What does that mean?
Levers? Yeah, levers. There are multiple levers you can pull to drive revenue. For example, the company can grow by selling more to new people, or selling more to the existing customers they have, or retain more of the base they have. Those are some, I think, kind of baseline principles that, and I'm kind of getting sidetracked here a little bit, but those are the types of things I want to understand. Do they understand these things?
Yeah.
Or do they even have a little bit or very surface level understanding? I can teach them much more, or the company can teach them more, but you need some baseline understanding there.
Yeah.
And then, without going, too far down the rabbit hole, I'll kind of just fast forward into, I guess the last two, which are, I know I talked about GSD. I think that's fairly straightforward. I want to see a track record of kind of lifetime accomplishment or achievement. Not to the nth degree necessarily, but I definitely want to see things like you were active in your community, you preferred to, and it doesn't matter what it was, even if you were a gamer, did you at least organize a bunch of people and get together to play video games? I don't care if you did that or if you were an athlete or something else, you were head of the investment club or something. I just want to see that you were passionate about a thing, and that you're kind of looking to do something with your life. You have some interest in that, which I know.
It's a hashtag GSD.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like, it shows a little bit of that grit.
But before you go to the next one, though, Stig, you kind of skipped self-awareness.
I did skip self-awareness. As I thought about it, it is.
I mean, we could scratch it from the list, No.
It is. So the reason I skipped over it is that I'm not. This is a tough one. I think that if you hire someone with a low level of self-awareness, it is the kiss of death. It is the most important. It is the most important thing I think that you need to interview for. It's kind of like a baseline. Like if you don't demonstrate like a medium to high level of self-awareness, or what some people call like, I think emotion, like a high emotional IQ, I literally cannot hire you. I've hired people in the past who have zero self-awareness. It causes so many problems with customers, with other team members, in a coaching environment, that the second you sniff out that someone is not aware of their own behavior or the way that they are perceived by other people, you have to pull the cord immediately. It is something that I personally think you cannot teach. Someone either has it or they don't. In terms of how you interview for it, I don't really have good advice. It's and that's why I skipped over a little bit, that there's not necessarily, I mean, I'm sure if I really gave it some deep thought, like there are probably questions that I could think of. But it's so much in just observing. It's your gut. It is a gut thing. I think part of it. You can't teach.
I mean, it's a gut feeling, as my former business partner used to say. He had a good gut. Like he hired well because he had a good gut. He's like, I got a gut feeling about this. Right. This person's not gonna. They're not gonna work out, and that's another talent that you can't teach. But
there are times too where like I'm you can ask anyone on the recruiting team at HubSpot or ask people I've interviewed. Like I bet that they would tell you I am not a difficult interviewer. But there are times where I have been difficult with people. So for example, if someone's going on, and I've done this before. Like I usually for whatever reason, I take my watch off. I like to look at it for the timing. I don't like to have my phone open or my computer open when I interview. But I take my watch off and I look at it, and I realize that, if someone's been speaking for 5 minutes straight in the beginning of the interview, like sometimes I'll stop right there and I'll pause and I'll ask them, do you realize that you're speaking for 5 minutes straight? And I'll just wait to see how they respond.
And then just be quiet. Shutting up is a great interview tactic.
Right. Right.
Because then everybody feels uncomfortable. The interviewee is like, okay, I should say something.
Right. And then there's like times I'd say, and they're like, oh no, I didn't realize that. Okay. And then my next question is, okay, and if you were me, how would you feel about that? Like it's like, believe me, like you're going to get someone like right out of their comfort zone, and you're going to get like right into.
I was gonna say that's just awkward.
It is. Like, it is, but it's like it's that first moment. I mean, there have been times, it's very few. I'd say it's maybe 1 or 2 in 100 I've done this where I've actually cut the interview short because of that. Wow. And I've said like, I'm sorry, I just don't think that this is a fit. I think, we didn't do the right job, figuring out this whole thing. We're done. And it's not meant to be a jerk type thing to do. It's just like, this is not a good use of anyone's time right now. The other thing I'll do too is kind of same thing, where at the very end, I try to leave, my interviews are usually 30 minutes, and I usually try to leave at least 10 or more minutes for them to ask questions. Anything they want, like anything is fair game. And I don't know, maybe you wouldn't be, like, you'd be surprised like how rarely, everyone has questions like, oh yeah, like how'd you join the company? Or how'd you, move from the role you're in, 5 years ago to the role you're in now? Or what's a day in the life of, a sales rep? Those are easy questions. Very rarely will you find someone who asks very kind of deep, insightful questions. And so again, the people that, and that's kind of, again, a different topic around like intellectual curiosity, or just being curious, period. Never mind being intellectual, just being curious. the people who don't ask those questions, in a way, to me, that again shows a very low level of self-awareness, because I'm wondering whether or not they are aware that they're making a very poor impression on me, that they haven't taken the time to think critically about the company that they might want to work for. So anyway, it's a very difficult thing. I think you're right. It is more of a gut feel. I'm not recommending any of the kind of like awkward interview tactics that,
Yeah,
that
I was
I've
going to
used.
say, I will never do that. That would be so, I mean,
Yeah, it's
I'll call
one of those-
you. I'll be like, say, can you interview this person? Ask
Yeah,
them
I
that
mean,
question.
there is a little bit of an emotional roller coaster I do want to take someone on. Not the whole ride, not the whole 30 minutes, but maybe for 30 seconds, and break out of it. But anyway, that's those are my thoughts, as poor, as cruel as they may sound, about self-awareness. But I do those things, I take it so seriously that it's a mistake you cannot recover from if you hire someone that lacks self-awareness.
Yeah. Interesting.
Money bit, anything else?
Yeah. No, I want to talk about the money bit, because I know that's always an issue for me. Like, I get to the end of a presentation and I'm like, okay, this is the monthly cost, and great, I'm going to send you guys the contract and I'll call you back later and we'll see what you think. Okay, bye. We're talking about, retainers here, like monthly retainers, year long. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that my team is worth 10 times what I'm even asking for.
Mm-hmm.
However, what am I going to say? Like, trust me, my team is so good. This is a bargain. Like,
Yep.
I just talk about money weakness, please.
I just want to understand how comfortable someone, and this is, for anyone who doesn't work in sales, just even people who work, just for anybody, the things I'm going to say, just fair warning, might sound very awkward, arrogant, invasive. So bear with me on this.
Okay.
All I'm talking about when it comes to money weakness is literally, what is your level of comfort talking about money? That is it. Because that is a required part of the job when you work in sales. You ultimately have to talk about how much someone's going to spend, what things cost, making a business case for why to spend the money, and write a check or send an ACH transfer or whatever. Or swipe the credit card. Like, ultimately, that is just part of the job. You cannot avoid that. You have to talk about money in various ways. And so when I talk about money weakness,